The German army of World War II was characterized by creating a series of elite divisions, which were unmatched by the units of any other army. Divisions such as Das Reich, Leibstandard, Großdeutschland, Hermann Göring, Panzer Lehr, Totenkopf, Viking or Hitlerjugend, along with the feared heavy panzer battalions, to which aces such as Michael Wittmann, Otto Carius, or Kurt Nispel belonged, still continue to instill fear in today. But why did the German army insist on creating so many elite divisions? What function did they have to fulfill? And finally, what happened when many of these divisions coincided in the same combat sector? Well, this is exactly what we are going to see next. The German campaigns, from the beginning of the war to the end, were always characterized by concentrating a large number of units in a specific sector, where the aim was to hit the enemy with the greatest force possible, and thereby obtain a great victory. It was known as Schwerpunkt or point of maximum effort. When World War II began in September 1939, most of the units we have named were just motorized regiments that supported conventional panzer divisions. After the campaigns in Poland, France, the Balkans, and later Operation Barbarossa in the Soviet Union, in which regiments such as the Leibstandard or Großdeutschland had a very important performance, little by little all these units increased in size until they became divisions. Other units such as the Das Reich or the Totenkopf had already been transformed into divisions long before. In any case, we can set the year 1942 as the moment in which all these units finished taking the step and became divisions, with a staff of between 18,000 and 21,000 troops. A separate case were the Panzer Lehr Division or Hitlerjugend, which were not created until the following year. The first time that these elite units met in large numbers was at the beginning of 1943 on the Eastern Front. At this time, and despite the name, these divisions were equivalent to perfectly equipped panzer units, with between 200 and 250 tanks. Although they were already powerful on their own, the German High Command decided to group them together so that they would still have greater combat capacity. In this way, the first SS Panzer Corps were born. In early 1943, the 2nd SS Panzer Corps was urgently sent to the Eastern Front to help stabilize the front, after the disaster that had occurred at Stalingrad. The Leibstandard Division, the Das Reich and the Totenkopf were grouped into this SS Panzer Corps, thus constituting one of the most powerful combat formations in the entire German army. In addition, and if that were not enough, the Großdeutschland Division was also sent to the outskirts of Kharkov, where it ended up joining the rest of the elite units of the Waffen-SS. Together, they participated in Manstein's famous counteroffensive in Kharkov, and were key in the operation that ended up stabilizing the southern Eastern Front in early March 1943. They then prepared to participate in Operation Citadel, in which the outcome of the war would be decided. It is estimated that for the Battle of Kursk, between the three divisions of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, there were a total of 60,000 troops along with 667 battle tanks and tank destroyers of all types, including 42 Tiger-type armored vehicles, and almost 250 Panzer IV. On the other hand, the Großdeutschland Division was located on the left flank of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, integrated into the 48th Army Corps. On its staff it had about 21,000 troops along with 232 battle tanks, and a group of 200 Panthers also assigned to them. Despite their enormous strength, they could do little against a defensive system planned by the Soviets for many months, and armored reserves even greater than the Germans. Turning now to the Western Front, we have the creation of the Hitlerjugend Division, throughout 1943, and the Lehr Panzer Division at the end of that year. Again, the German High Command intended to create a division with firepower never seen before. The exact phrase that was used when creating the Lehr Panzer Division was that it alone would have to be powerful enough to repel the Allied invasion attempt on France. Specifically, in early 1944, Guderian told General Bayerlein, commander of Panzer Lehr, the following: "This unit has been created specifically to repel the imminent Allied invasion of France. With this division alone, you should be able to drive the enemy into the sea. Your goal is not the coast, it is the sea." After the defeats suffered on the Eastern Front in late 1943 and early 1944, the German High Command put all its efforts into repelling the imminent Allied invasion of France, scheduled for the spring or summer of 1944. To this end, it concentrated divisions such as the Leibstandard, Das Reich, Panzer Lehr, and Hitlerjugend, along with several heavy panzer battalions, along the Atlantic coast and in the interior of France. Furthermore, an armored battalion from the Grossdeutschland Division, which was training in France, also ended up participating in the Battle of Normandy. On the other hand, other elite units such as the Hermann Göring Division, or the Totenkopf and Viking, belonging to the 4th SS Panzer Corps, managed to contain the Soviet vanguards at the gates of Warsaw in August 1944. After the German resistance in Normandy, which elite German units were able to extend for almost 2.5 months, the collapse of the Western Front occurred. Due to the intense fighting, by mid-September 1944, most German elite units were practically annihilated. From this point on, they had to reconstitute themselves at full speed, and the quality of their members dropped abysmally. They no longer had the training they had had a few years ago, and although on paper the division was complete, its combat capacity was much lower. After making enormous efforts, by early December, the Leibstandard, Das Reich, Hitlerjugend, Panzer Lehr, and Hohenstaufen divisions were again ready to participate in the Ardennes offensive, leading Hitler's last gamble on the Western Front. Although during the first hours of the operation, the Germans made considerable progress, the German units soon became stagnant due to logistical problems, traffic jams, climatic factors, and an increase in Allied resistance. When it became clear in late December that the German offensive had failed, and with it, Germany had lost its last chance to force a separate peace with the Western Allies, the German leader stated the following: "The enemy's air superiority is too great. I have been trained. After the attack I suffered this summer, I realized that the betrayal had gone further than I could ever imagine. I have encouraged and decorated them all, and that has been the gratitude I have received. I have lacked tenacious fighters, but we will never capitulate. We may sink, but we will take the whole world with us." Again, and after being greatly weakened in the Ardennes, the majority of these units, grouped within Joseph Dietrich's 6th SS Panzer Army, were urgently sent to the Hungarian front, while receiving reinforcements along the way. Hubert Meyer, as former commander-in-chief of the Hitlerjugend Division, commented as follows in early 1945. "Between February 2nd and 6th, the division was mounted aboard trains in the southern area of Cologne and transferred to Hungary. The replacements joined their units at the railway terminals. Some of them were wounded from military hospitals, others were Kriegsmarine or Luftwaffe personnel, who suffered from insufficient training for ground combat. The final integration into their units could only be carried out after arriving in Hungary. The men of the Kriegsmarine and the Luftwaffe had to fight with the division without having received any training. It is not intended to belittle these men when one affirms that the combat power of the division was not increased in proportion to the troops it received. As we see, this was the last time that the German elite divisions were able to enjoy a few weeks of rest, after which they did not enjoy any rest and were not reconstituted again. On the other hand, also on the Hungarian front, the 4th SS Panzer Corps, made up of the Totenkopf and Viking divisions, had been fighting throughout the month of January in the so-called Conrad operations, in their attempt to liberate the city of Budapest. As soon as it arrived at the Hungarian front, the 1st SS Panzer Corps, composed of the Leibstandard and Hitlerjugend divisions, participated in Operation South Wind, with which they achieved Germany's last significant victory on the Eastern Front. At the same time, very close to Berlin, the 3rd SS Panzer Corps attacked the right flank of Zhukov's 1st Belarusian front in Pomerania in mid-February. This offensive was known as Operation Solstice, and in it, the Germans barely managed to advance a few kilometers to the south before becoming stagnant. Finally, on March 6, the Germans concentrated practically everything they had left, and launched Operation Spring Awakening in the vicinity of Lake Balaton. In this operation, the 1st SS Panzer Corps participated, with the Leibstandard and the Hitlerjugend, the 2nd SS Panzer Corps with the Das Reich and the Hohenstaufen, and the 4th SS Panzer Corps with the Totenkopf and the Viking covered the left flank of the operation. Multiple armored divisions of the regular army joined them, and together they staged the last great charge of the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front. Again, and in a similar way to what happened in Kursk, the Germans attacked a sector strongly defended by the Soviets, and after advancing about 50 kilometers towards the Danube River, they were surprised by a strong Soviet offensive in their rear. Although the sector attacked by the Soviets, west of Lake Valens, was defended by the 4th SS Panzer Corps, its defensive line ended up breaking after a few days of fierce resistance, and finally the 6th SS Panzer Army had to begin a withdrawal until Vienna. As we have seen in this program, starting in 1943, all the elite units of the German army assumed the weight of each new offensive, being the spearhead in each operation. Always fighting against enemies that outnumbered them, these units had to face very adverse situations, in which they could only achieve small tactical or strategic victories.